I think a lot of partnerships are formed for their own reasons. Like someone might want to get in front of another person's audience or vice versa, but there's not really an alignment there. It's not natural or organic.
This is You Should Talk To, a podcast for busy marketing leaders who are looking for support and tips on getting shit done. In each episode, Daniel Weiner interviews marketing leaders and discusses their experience, successes, and failures around hiring agencies. If you're interested in finding and choosing the right agency partner, then let's jump in.
Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the You Should Talk To podcast. I am Daniel Weiner, the founder of You Should Talk To, and this podcast is currently brought to you by You Should Talk To until a sponsor ponies up the big bucks. You Should Talk To pairs brands and marketers for free with vetted agencies and or freelancers for pretty much any marketing or technology need. Why? Because finding great agencies is a really big pain in the ass. Super excited today to be joined by the CMO of Impact.com, Cristy Garcia. Thank you so much for joining us. Cristy, do you want to give us a background on how we got here and what you do over at Impact?
Sure. And let me first say how honored I am to be your first guest. That's so great.
I'm honored. Mutual honor.
And we'll try to help you get some sponsors here. Maybe we can come up with some really great content today.
I want big dollars by the end of the week. So,
all right. I'm Cristy Garcia. I'm the CMO of Impact.com. I've been with Impact for around 4 years now, working my way up. And now I am the CMO driving pipeline bookings and brand awareness for the company globally. So Impact.com, and just a short descriptor here, we are a partnership management platform, the leading partnership management platform, where we can support the full life cycle of any partnership. So if you're a brand, you're looking for influencers to work with or other brands to work with, you can come to the platform in the marketplace and find those partners. We actually are able to recommend partners based on what you're looking for. Then you can contract, you can begin working together, sharing, assets back and forth, driving sales, and then seeing all the reporting and paying out right there in the platform. So that's what it is. You can bring existing partners over. And we've been working with a lot of the IR 500, specifically the IR top 10, 60% is now working on our platform. So very excited and keep driving forward, getting, partnerships, trying to help partnerships help other businesses make additional money, a new revenue.
And you all just had a pretty big event up in New York City that I was sad to miss, didn't you? How'd that go?
It was a great event. So we had what's called IPX, Impact.com's partnership experience. It was the first time we've been back in several years, which was very exciting. You could tell that there was an appetite for in-person events. Everyone was just glowing. I think the content was super strong, of course, saying from the CMO of the company, but we did get a lot of really positive feedback, especially for our conversation with our special guest, Trevor Noah. And I'm not going to give anything away, but our CEO actually did some breakdancing on stage. It's true. With Trevor Noah, beatboxing. So you can see all of that on our website.
I was going to say, if we can somehow edit that into this episode, I feel like
that would be great. Yeah, it's online.
Yeah.
It's there.
Even better. No, I was purposefully interested in speaking with you. Impact.com is all about partnerships. My entire business is basically a partnership model.
That's right.
I work with roughly 60 agencies or so to varying capacities, roughly 50 freelancers. In your opinion, what makes for an excellent partnership?
Well, I think there's a lot of ingredients for that, but the top 3, I would say, probably the first is authenticity. I think a lot of partnerships are formed for their own reasons. Like someone might want to get in front of another person's audience or vice versa, but there's not really an alignment there. It's not natural or organic. Shared goals, are you both pulling your weight for the partnership to be successful? Are you all working towards getting to a certain level or getting to a certain payout amount? And the third is over-communicate to build trust. I think when you're in the beginning of any relationship, being responsive is really important. It's important throughout the life cycle of the partnership, but more so in the very beginning. If there's no update, just responding by saying there's no update, letting people, your partner know that you've received the message and just kind of staying on top of that. I think those 3 ingredients, authenticity, shared goals, and communication, really can make a really solid partnership.
Yeah, I think the first one's particularly interesting. I see a lot of, probably the majority of partnerships out there seem to be one-sided. Somebody wants something from someone else and hasn't really given, a huge amount of thought to what the other side is getting from them. So
Exactly.
totally agree there. In the context of, new vendors and agencies, I presume now that you're in the C-suite, you've had your fair share of vendor searches in your career. What are you looking for, from an agency or a third-party vendor when you're sourcing those?
So I think the way that an agency stands out to me is their portfolio, making it easy to view. A lot of the issues I have with agencies, let's talk about creative agencies, for example, they might show this beautiful work, but it's like, can you give me some stats? Like, what did that actually do for the customer that you had? Like, I don't need to necessarily know that you can create beautiful content. For me, it's more about, what did this provide for that person? Was it a brand lift in awareness? Is there affinity? Was there some sort of, direct response campaign element to it? Is there anything that you can share as far as results go, except a pretty picture, which is nice to see, but not exactly what I'm, looking for. Because at the end of the day, every dollar spent in B2B marketing usually has to have some form of return. And so for me, that's very important, understanding what they can provide to me. And then secondly, the same urgency in the middle of the partnership that I saw in the beginning. And an example of that would be if you're working with an agency for a while and you tell them you're unhappy because you're not getting what you want out of it. And all of a sudden it's like, you're the star of the show. There's so many
Sure.
great ideas. Everyone's pressing the gas pedal. Everyone's ready to go. But you didn't get that until you showed how unhappy you were. I want an agency that's always doing that. That I don't have to say, oh, by the way, you've been slipping here and there. I don't feel like you're coming to the table with new ideas. That should happen with the relationship. That's what we're paying for in a lot of cases. So I think that those things are really important when looking for
You want the honeymoon phase to last longer than just the honeymoon, presumably,
Yeah,
it
if it
sounds like.
could. Yeah, I think that's really important. It's
Yeah,
it's a sign of respect in my
yeah,
mind and being
absolutely.
attuned to someone's needs.
Yeah. Also, probably makes it easier to ask for more budget and renewals when those things come up after the contract terminates and stuff like that. To
Exactly.
that end, once you've determined that you're looking for an agency, a freelancer, or some sort of vendor, where are you going typically? I find now like communities are a huge place that people are having these conversations, whereas many, many years ago, you were probably, in my experience, going to Google and searching for, agency with the city name after it and something like that. Where are you most finding success when you're looking for something like that? Other than me, of course, now that you know that
Of
I exist.
course. Of course. Well, I think I'm doing what everyone else is doing. And it's the problem. It's hard. That's why it's hard to reach consumers nowadays, because what they're doing is they're going into these communities and they're posting in social, right? And that's what the whole concept of dark social came from, because you cannot track it back. It's a conversation happening on the platform with no links exchanged. So there's no tracking. The other thing is, if you had asked me a year ago, I wouldn't have had this option, but now I'm a member of Chief, which is a women only network for VP and higher. And so I will post in the community board, hey guys, looking for this. Can anyone help me? And suddenly I have 20 messages. Sometimes it's people advocating for themselves. Other times it's people just giving their experiences. I had a great experience working with this agency and it's been super helpful. But yes, going to like just Googling and looking for reviews is really the only time I'm going to use a search engine, and trying to find the authentic ones that I can tell haven't been compensated for leaving a good review. So G2 Crowd is the big one for me as a B2B marketer, but also just, reaching out on LinkedIn and asking the question, I think is still really important. So there's a lot of different channels that I'm using now to find the right agencies or vendors.
That's great. I've seen a big shift since COVID in the brands that I'm talking to, particularly bigger brands moving away from bigger agencies and moving towards smaller,
Boutique agencies. Yeah.
yeah, independent agencies as well. Do you have an opinion of that? Do you think that, big companies or big named companies, quote unquote, need big agencies?
No, I'll tell you, some of the best work I've ever gotten has been from a small agency, like small, like 3 people.
And did that come down to the more the work, more the experience, process, all the above?
It was all of the above, but they got it. Like they cared. They actually, this is one of the best examples I can give of a really strong, solid working relationship I had with an agency was before we even got on the call, they had every single thing about the company memorized. Like they knew exactly who we were targeting. They understood what challenges we were facing. At some point I was kind of like, did I put this in the creative brief? Like, how do you possibly know this? But they had done all of this research. And so when I'm talking, they were finishing my sentences. And that really meant a lot because it wasn't fake. It didn't feel like they were putting on airs or trying to talk how great they were. They were telling me what I needed. And I'm just going to admit it like everybody else. Like sometimes I need someone to tell me what I want, right? Like I'll say, I'm looking for this and okay, let me tell you what you want. And you have to be aware as a marketer and a leader that you may not know everything, first of all. But second of all, finding an agency that has done that due diligence, it's a sign of things to come, I believe.
The honeymoon phase begins before the sale.
Yeah, it did in this case.
That's great. And was that a long-lasting relationship?
Yeah, at the time I'm no longer with the company, but yeah, there was the 2 years I was there. I didn't ever look elsewhere. I know 2 years doesn't sound like a long time, but it felt like a long time at that company.
That's a long time in agency world. It's hard to retain clients. To go to the other side of that without bashing anybody, can you think of a bad agency experience and what made that, not as positive as what you just described?
It's the same thing. It's never a bad agent. It's never a bad experience for me. It's more like, how much do I have to push? Because if I'm paying, I'm going to get it one way or the other. Yeah, until I can find someone who maybe I don't have to push so hard. But it's that same concept that we talked about earlier, where I have to be unhappy in order to get something. Like the creaky wheel gets the oil or whatever.
Squeaky wheel gets something.
Not creaky, squeaky. And I don't want to have to be that all the time. I don't have time for that. I need someone who understands the role that they play and continue to do their best in that without me having to constantly check. And I've heard the saying, like, an agency is only as good as the person managing it. I don't believe that. I don't. I think some bad agencies, that might be true, but I know there are a lot of agencies that don't need that constant reminder to do good. They are out there. I have found them.
Yeah, I get such a wide swath of feedback from brand marketers. Being a free service to them, the only real ask I have is for feedback after the process. And I get some that say that. The biggest takeaway I have, or that I think now, which some say is controversial, is I don't think the work matters. And what I mean by that is, if your pre-sale activity, like you talked, being ready on a call, you don't even get to do the work, And also, if the process and all those things, and you're pushing, if the work isn't a home run out of the gate, there's usually more tolerance for, correcting it and stuff like that. Do you agree with that? Or is the work, at the end of the day, the work is, what matters to you?
No, I think it's exactly like you said. It's important to have a relationship and to have, that communication going and have shared goals like we talked about. And the work is important, but what's more important is, how you get the work, right? How do you get to that? Is it because you're screaming and punching and stomping, or is it because they actually understand your business and your needs? And the great work comes from that. I think it would be hard to have a good relationship with an agency and not get great work from them.
That's why I am a firm believer that whether it's good or bad, it is a little bit of a popularity contest. Because if you do not like who you're working with and you don't vibe well and mesh well, it's really hard to get good work out of people that you don't look forward to having calls and meetings with, meshing with. So it's good to be likable in those scenarios. One of the questions we got from LinkedIn earlier today, actually, was somebody asked your perspective on what's the biggest challenge marketing departments are facing right now. Take your pick. I can think of 20 off the top of my head.
I would say the cost of everything. I think advertising has gotten out of control. Trying to reach a consumer without being intrusive, very difficult. There's a lot of problems marketers are facing right now with consumers just being very distracted and not believing the ads and the messaging. And so that's where partnerships come in handy, because if you are partnering with like an affiliate marketing or through the partnership channel, let's say you have a third party that's telling the world how good you are. They're promoting you. You're borrowing their brand, recognition and leveraging it to sell more of your product and services. You need to have that validation. Like there is going to need to be somebody who's saying, hey, it works. This is good, in order for people to buy nowadays. You can't do it any other way. I don't know anybody who doesn't do research before buying. So I think that having third party validation is really important, whether that's through customer advocacy or through ambassadors or through influencers or affiliates or other brands or however you want to do it. You're not going to get through to a customer by yourself with no reviews or no, just through advertising alone. It's just not going to work anymore. So I think that's a challenge for people.
Marketing is really hard these days, especially. You're competing for so much, an astronomical amount of attention. None of it's cheap. And it's just really hard. It's funny when I talk to agencies about onboarding them, one of the questions I ask, which sometimes I get a laugh, sometimes I don't. I'm like, do you agree business development is really hard? And some are like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you think business development is really, it's hard to get in front of people. It's hard for people to say yes. And, and I want to hear their response. If they say it's easy, I say, you probably don't need me then, because I think it's really hard.
It is hard. It is.
Yeah.
There are certain businesses that do better than others in times of economic downturn. And I would say that the partnership channel and what impact.com does has actually become more important in times of like recession or economic downturn, because these partnerships are based on action. It's CPA. So you're not paying for impressions. You're only paying if there was a sale. I mean, that's the best type of payment model a marketer can ask for. We actually see pickup in times like these. We're not one of the channels that typically gets cut off, like, let's say display or paid search, because those prices are astronomical now and probably not as effective as they used to be. But I think that, there are certain channels that do well. And so maybe align yourself with one of those channels.
No, that's great advice. Do you see any major differences? And if so, like, what's the biggest one in your role now as CMO from when you were a VP of marketing, once you entered the C-suite?
Yeah, I think you kind of carry your responsibilities along with you all the way up. I'm getting better at delegating. I'm getting better at, being promotional for the business instead of just kind of behind the scenes and talking to customers. So those are things that I'm doing now more than I did when I was a VP. But it's also great to be part of a leadership team like the one that I'm on. Like, we sit around and we talk and we make decisions together. And that's something that I've wanted at this company for a long time, because I feel like I do have opinions and I have some ideas that can create change. And so being part, of that, having a seat at the table has been really important for me personally and professionally. It's kind of an obvious statement, but I really enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed being at the level that I am and the work that it took to get here. And I want to keep working. But the question of what has changed, honestly, is just sort of being able to delegate more and not doing as much of the work yourself to a certain extent, being more strategic and less hands-on, and then building a strong team around you. Like, it's so important. And I'm very, very lucky that I have that strong marketing team, because I can't be there and I'm not in the weeds anymore.
That's great. That's a good leeway into the fun questions I have for you now. You mentioned that you're not as hands-on as you used to and you're delegating stuff. What was your very, very, very first job growing up?
I was a lifeguard at a water park.
And did that prepare you for your CMO role in any capacity? You're maybe saving lives now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Saving lives through partnerships, saving businesses, maybe. I don't know.
That's true.
It was fun. You got a good tan.
Yeah. Your last meal if you were on death row.
I'm a huge Thai food fan, so I'm not going to pretend to pronounce it in Thai for you. Let's not do that. Fair. But it is like a lemongrass chicken that has like a papaya salad with it.
Okay.
And then for dessert, I would get 16 handles. I don't know if that's a nationwide brand, but you can go. So. They literally
ice cream.
Yeah, they literally have 16 handles that you can pull for your ice cream, all 16 different types, and then you can put toppings on it. So for me, that's my meal.
I have very few addictions, and coffee and ice cream are two of them.
Oh my gosh, so. Me too. I don't go a day without eating ice cream.
Me too. Every meal, regardless of how it stops me from
wanting to eat more. Always have room for ice cream.
Yeah,
yes,
of course.
Always have room.
Maybe we'll get an ice cream sponsor after this. The final question, maybe the most important: who's someone who inspires you? Personally, professionally, could be anybody.
I'm a big fan of writing and content, and so I could probably name a couple authors, but I also really love art. And I would say my favorite living artist right now, his name is Eric White, and he paints and he does these really beautiful, like, surreal images, very abstract in some ways, but it just inspires me every time I see it. I actually went to his gallery in New York and he was there and he signed a book for me, but just looking at his work, I just get really inspired.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Cristy. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. I presume the best spot to find anything about Impact is impact.com, unless you tell me otherwise. And I presume the best way to get in touch with you, whether you want people to or not, would be LinkedIn. I won't even dream of sharing an email of a CMO, so I'll save your inbox. But thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome, and I appreciate the insight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What an honor to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for checking out this episode of You Should Talk To. This show is brought to you by the company with the same name, You Should Talk To, a company that helps marketing leaders find the right agency or freelancer for their situation. If you enjoyed what you learned in this episode, make sure to follow You Should Talk To wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or visit YouShouldTalkTo.com for more information.